Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Dayamudirayet Srinmatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhrit Satam नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतिरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So for today, we will be discussing the summary of Canto 4, Chapter 27. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Pashtadeshtarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. I humbly bow down to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. So we'll discuss the Canto 4, Chapter 27. So this is in continuation. This chapter is titled Attack by Chandavega on the city of King Puranjana. Right. So this particular chapter is just a continuation of the parable or the story, the allegorical story, which Narada Muni is instructing King Prachina Barhi. And so we can have like multiple different viewpoints from this. I'll just try to summarize what we have discussed so far in this. And so one thing to note here is, so there is a lot of characters introduced in this particular chapter, right? So just to explain them again for everybody's benefit. So we have Puranjana. Puranjana is the king, and the king in the story. And Puranjana is a reference to the jiva or the conditioned soul. And Puranjana is actually very attached and is married to Queen Puranjani. And Puranjani is the mind or intelligence, and that charms the soul into sense enjoyment. And then there is the city of Panchala, which Puranjana is the ruler of. And the city of Panchala is an allegorical reference to the body or the field or the kshetra or our actions. And Chandavega, the Gandharva king, who is coming and attacking the city of Panchala, and that is the representative of time. Time is very swift and relentless. And the time has a lot of soldiers here. Similarly, the Chandavega has 360 male soldiers and 360 female Gandharvas. This represents the days and the nights that plunder our life and everything we have for enjoyment. And then there is a representation of the five-hooded serpent. So the five-hooded serpent, which is actually warding off the attack of Chandavega for hundreds of years. And that represents the five life heirs, the Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. And these are the ones which are actually protecting the city, which is the city of the allegorical reference to the body. And then there is the reference to Kalakanya or Jara. So that is the representation of old age. And Kalakanya was rejected by all, but yet it was unavoidable. And finally, Baya or Yavana king, which is representative of fear and death. Jara is married by Baya. So this is interestingly what we see here is the mercy of Narada Muni. So Narada Muni is a very elevated Vaishnava. He's a very dear servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in multiple stories, we have seen like how Narada Muni picks the right message for a living entity to be delivered from this material world. So here, Narada Muni is explaining this allegorical reference to Prachina Barhi, King Prachina Barhi, because he was so attached to animal sacrifice. So Narada Muni is making a point by giving a parable or a story and making the king realize himself. So if we take multiple examples like this, Narada Muni, when he instructed, when he was cursed, like Manigriva and Nalakuvera, because they were not respectful towards him, he made them stand as the Arjuna trees, because that was their consciousness was in such a state that Narada Muni wanted them to take this position of trees and eventually get relieved by taking darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, we hear about how Narada Muni instructed Valmiki to just chant Mara, because he was in such a degraded state of life where he was killing animals, and it was difficult for him to do anything besides that. So he was given this very simple chant of Mara, which eventually became Rama, 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 and he became Valmiki. And similarly, we see how Narada Muni, while Vyasadeva was being despondent, Vyasadeva, having written all the Vedic literatures, having compiled all the Vedas, he was distraught because he felt that he didn't glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead enough, and he was being remorseful. And we see in Srimad Bhagavatam that Narada Muni, who is a spiritual master for Veda Vyas, he came in his he came before him and instructed him to write this glorious literature of Srimad Bhagavatam. So here it's an opportunity for us to appreciate the greatness of Narada Muni and how he picks the right message for the jiva to be able to get past this material entanglement. So here Narada Muni is explaining this allegorical story to Prachina Barhi, so that he will be able to develop intuition and eventually understand that one's life, the purpose of life is to actually go back home, back to Godhead. So here there is very interesting spotlights here. So I would say there are like 5 different themes in broad context. The storyline would be like the text 1 to 5, where how the King Puranjana or the jiva is actually ensnared by enjoyment. So Puranjana returns from hunting, and which is representation of all the sinful wanderings, right? And we just try to find happiness in anything and everything by using sense enjoyment, and he becomes a Strijitaha. Strijitaha is a Sanskrit word which means conquered by women, and so he was completely conquered by the affection and indulgence, and he forgets that each day he's spending is actually a waste. He's actually wasting each and every second of his life. So this reminded me of this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's in the second canto. It says, Ayur harati vai pumsham udayam astamanche ennasau yasma kshanam nirnita uttama shloka vartaye. So it says, Ayur harati vai pumsham. The lifetime of a soul is actually harati vai pumsam of a man is continuously getting degraded. Harati vai pumsam udayam astamam che ennasau. Just like how there is sunrise and sunset continuously happening, the lifetime of a person is continuously dwindling. And yasma kshano nirnita uttama shloka vartaye. So, but if one indulges his life in glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, uttama shloka vartaye, then for such person there is no death. Right? So everybody is actually marching towards death. And here Narada Muni is making that point very evident by explaining to Prachina Barhi that he's become so attracted to sense enjoyment. And that's the Puranjana story where he says about Stri Jitaha, conquered by affection and intelligence, and forgets that each day and each moment is actually spent because it's not focused on the absorption on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, and that's the first portion where the text 1 to 5 they talk about how Puranjana is actually gotten so ensnared by the sense of enjoyment. He's captured by Puranjani, which is the material intelligence, and he wants to enjoy this material world. Right. So the second is the karma and the crowding. So what happens is King Puranjana actually begets 1,100 sons and 110 daughters. So, what are these representations of? So, these are actually representations of our actions and desires, so which actually plunder one's wealth and attention. So just by being entangled in this material world, by being ensnared by the material intelligence, we get so entrapped in sense enjoyment that we are not able to understand that this is a perpetual reality. Like we will not be able to get out of this because action begets action, and we continue in this cycle of birth and death, and that's called bhavapavarga. So here in the text 6 to 10, that particular aspect is explained, like how just by one desire to enjoy this that Puranjana has gotten ensnared by the material intelligence, and now because of the karmic repercussions, he is actually gotten into this kind of continuous cycle or bhava pavarga. And then the third beat, which is the text 11 to 12, it's explaining how King Puranjana is performing all the ghastly animal killing to chase many worldly aims. And Narada hints that this is like Prachina Barihi himself, because it's very interesting. Like in psychology, like typically when people are given therapy, the if you, when we talk to a therapist, the most important thing which one develops is intuition on his own problem. So if one develops the intuition on his own problem, then the problem is almost solved, right? So that's what Narada Muni is trying to do here. He's actually trying to make Prachina Barihi realize that the animal killing he's doing is actually sinful by bringing him the story of Puranjana and explaining how he has gotten himself very entangled. So that's the third message, which is from text 11 to 12. And so that is ritual without devotion to Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's just doing all these ghastly sacrifices just to get more sense enjoyment. And then there is this theme about the siege of Chandavega. So Chandavega, we saw, has is the Gandharva king who is actually coming and taking over this particular city of Panchala. And Chandavega, he represents the time's swift attack, just like how in this material world we see everything changes with time. So here the allegorical reference of Chandavega is that time is going to take away one's life. Ayuru harati vai pumsam. So here, and so it depletes all our sense enjoyment, and as we age, our capacity to sense enjoyment goes down, and but the tendency to enjoy still exists. So as we age, basically what happens is, if we have the enjoyment tendency, then we'll have to take another birth, because this body is not capable of enjoying as much as it could, because of the advent of time. So here the representation of time is given by 360 male and 360 female soldiers. And if you think about it, so there are roughly 365 days, and that is 360 days, and each day has a day and a night, and 360 male soldiers represents the daytime, and 360 female soldiers represent the nighttime. So with each sunrise and sunset, it actually steals away a portion of our life, and unless and until it's used in devotional service. So this reminded me of a beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fifth chapter. And so here, this is Narada Muni's instructions to Vyasadeva. He says, Tasyeva heto prayateta kovida na labhyate yad brahmatam uparyadaha tal labhyate dukkavad anyata sukam kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa. So it says, Tasyeva hetoho, therefore find the purpose. Prayateta kovida. So somebody who is considered to be intelligent, he should find the purpose which is not obtained in any of this material realm. Yet brahmatam uparyadaha. Even if you go to the highest platform of Brahma or go to the lowest platform of Patala. So there, in all of these, you will not get whatever you don't get. That is the thing which one should endeavor for. Tal labhyate dukkavat anyata sukam. Just like how, so one should not endeavor for sense gratification or material gains here, because just like how sorrow comes to you without asking, tal labhyate dukkavat anyata sukam. Sukam, even whatever you're destined to get, you will get that because kalena sarvatra gabira ramhasa, by the potency of time. So whatever one has to get, one will eventually get. So one need not go and seek out happiness, is what this verse says. So this is a very wonderful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It says like the purpose of life is to actually find that purpose which will not be obtained in any of these material worlds, and that is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the message which Narada Muni is trying to convey by explaining the attack of Chandavega, or the Gandharva king, who is represented by these 360 male and 360 female soldiers, which represents the days and the nights. And then there is defense and decline. That's verse text 15 to 17, where the five-hooded serpent, which is the representation of the prana or the life air, which is prana, apana, udana, samana, and jnana. And so the five-hooded serpents actually fight against the time's army for 100 years, which means that everybody currently, we are all trying to fight away this influence of time, but gradually time is eating us away, right? So that's why Krishna says, Mrityur sarva harascha. So I am the death. So if even if one does not believe in anything in this creation, one has to be certain that death is coming, right? So that's the message which Narada Muni is trying to impress upon Prachina Barhi, that this life is always a march towards death. And unless and until we fix our minds on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are not making progress in our spiritual evolution. And then, so this five-hooded serpents represents the five life airs. And so despite the fight, the life energy fades, and that's the retirement age, right? So typically, so there is all this, there are shad vikaras. There is the birth, and then there is the growth, then there is dwindling, right? So there is dwindling, and typically as we age, our life force dwindles. So meditation at an old age without prior training is not possible. So typically when we talk to people, right, they say the most important thing for right now, because we are in a middle age, is to go and earn money. We will see about the spiritual realizations later, right? But Srila Prabhupada emphasizes in the purport, he says that meditation at an old age without prior training is actually a farce. So spiritual realization has to begin early in life, because as we grow through life, the realizations we have and the experiences we gain, if we put it all through in the lens of the spiritual life, then gradually our wisdom blossoms, and then we'll be able to see the life in the right realm, right? Otherwise, if we just engage ourselves in sense gratification, even in the old age, the tendency to enjoy still exists, but the capacity to enjoy goes down. So that is a very, very bad state to be in. So that's why the like allegorical reference to the five-headed serpent, whose energy is continually depleting. And then there is this arrival of Kalakanya, or old age and death, that is described in the verses 18 to 24. So Puranjana's ignorance is explained in text 18, where Puranjana collects taxes, which is the representation of karma phala, and uses this wealth for enjoyment, sense enjoyment, luxury, and ignoring the end, which is the death. And then there is this entry of Kalakanya, or Jara. So Jara is the daughter of time, and she is actually searching for a husband, and nobody wants her in the story, right? And symbolizing that no one wants to welcome old age. So everybody wants to be in a youthful state, because nobody wants to die. And she's called Durbaga, or ill-fated, in this in the story, because she's not able to find a husband. But eventually, she's married to King Yayati. A lesson that youth and sensuality has to inevitably end. And then so Jara is accompanied by Baya, which is the Yavana king, which is mentioned here, right? So because of Baya, which is fear, everybody fears old age, because death comes, and all the attachments and the family and the repercussions you have created in this material world all come to an end because of old age. So that's why it's mentioned the Kalakanya, or Jara, is actually is the daughter of time, because eventually one has to get to the old age. And typically she's called Durbaga because nobody wants to marry her. And then there is so Kalakanya actually tries to seduce Narada, and he symbolizes the a symbol of purity and detachment. So then there is this verse which says that Narada will not be able to stay in a place, but this becomes a blessing as it enables him to preach everywhere. And then Kalakanya marries Baya, the king of the Yavanas, symbolizing the old age is married to fear and death. And those who are not spiritually engaged are devoured by this union. So that's the text 23 and 24, where the marriage to Baya is explained. So just summarizing, so the philosophical themes or the allegorical references in this particular chapter, Puranjana's attachment, the conditioned soul's attachment to the identification of the body and the mind. And then there is Queen Puranjani, which represents the intelligence or the mind, sensual mind. And then there is the sons and daughters of Puranjana and Queen Puranjani, who are the representation of the pious and the impious karmas or the actions. And then there is the city of Panchala, which is the body with the senses and and the body of 9 gates, city of 9 gates. And then there's Chandavega and the soldiers, who represents time, the day and the night. And then the five-hooded serpent, which represents the five vital airs, prana, apana, udana, samana, and jnana. And then there's Kalakanya or Jara, which represents old age. And then Baya or the Yavana king, which represents fear and death. So these are the allegorical references. And the message we should take home is that the goal of the human life is not to continuously enjoy the sense enjoyment, but to prepare ourselves in a position where we seek that which is not obtained even in this three material worlds. So that's the verse we saw from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this story of Puranjana will continue, and there'll be more allegorical references here. But this simple story helps us to understand that we are all going through the same thing, but death is the eventuality, and the only way to be able to get past the cycle of birth and death, or bhava varga, is to fix our minds in the dedication to Supreme Personality of Godhead. So those are some